5 viewers. I don't know if I'm the only person suffering from this, but the video, the stream I did this morning still hasn't been processed. So, I don't know what's going on. So, am I being paranoid when I think YouTube are targeting me and they are somehow delaying the processing of my streams in order to retard the propagation of my message? I mean, why they should take so much trouble, I don't know. But it's taking, well, I did it this morning, didn't I? And it still hasn't processed, and it's 11:30 p.m. I think it's a little strange. In fact, I'm actually going to check now. Exactly how long ago it was. Do you think I'm being paranoid? But I have other things to say to you in spite of talking to you. Was it twice already? Yeah, so I've done 2 streams today, neither of which have been processed. So the one I did, I did one this morning, I did one this afternoon, and now I'm talking to you again. Are other people experiencing such long delays in the processing of their streams? Anyway, Jen has been making noises about wanting a debate. And I know she wants to rig it by insisting that it is a formal debate, and I don't want to waste anyone's time, really. And I know that morons and vegetables in the chat can't follow long speeches. So, if I'm speaking for 5 minutes on my own, talking about whatever in a formal way, you'll just forget what I said or not pay any attention. And then Jen will do her word salad, and then she won't care what anyone says, and she'll think she deserves to win just because of her the smoothness of her delivery or whatever. And that is how basically she hopes to win, and then she's going to assemble a panel that will agree that she's got the best argument. So we're kind of in negotiations. I've sent her the link. And she said, I want a moderator. And I thought, well, what do you want the moderator for? I let you speak. I don't interrupt. She won't be able to explain herself, I know, because, well, she doesn't explain herself very well, does she? But we should go back to the debate that Jen and I actually had in, was it June? There was really so much stuff. It just went on and on, the whole thing. And we know she plays dirty because she privated a stream of us discussing sound and valid arguments, and it was really news to her. So my idea was, because I managed to get her to reduce her ideas into 7 minutes of speech, So basically, the format of the debate is as follows. She had the proposition, which is that God is impersonal, and I was the opposition. So I think she spoke for 7 minutes. I spoke for 7 minutes. She dealt with my points, and then I dealt with my point. Oh, I can't remember how it went. I think she went first. So she spoke first. I spoke, and then she spoke and I spoke. But anyway, something went wrong, and I sort of left feeling, well, I never had the chance to deal with all the points that she raised, and so it will appear that whatever spurious points she raised, she will have got. And so I arrived on the idea of transcribing all that she said and all that I said, and try to extract from each speech sound or valid arguments. And basically, I had 3 sound arguments, and I couldn't find any. I was, doing my best. I think I kind of gave her one. I thought she might have made a valid argument. But the point is, she can't win, but she's sort of, whinging about it. About me not daring to debate her. And my point is that we should just do it on Ask FM. So anybody can, pop in to have a look and read the questions and answers and be able to decide which of us made the clearer case. But she won't do that because it's all about grandstanding for her. So I'm kind of hoping that she'll come along. Because she still dares to talk to me without a moderator. I'm not so scary after all, am I? Hi, Jen.
Oh, you wish it was Jen.
Oh no, it's just you. But you're just as welcome. I think it would be nice to have a civilized conversation for a change. And it's quite late, and I'm
I
probably a little
agree.
tired, and actually, you're the silver lining in my particular cloud.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I would actually offer myself as a moderator for your
Moderator.
new debate, for your debate with Jen. What do you
Sure.
think about that for like a new debate?
All right.
Because what I think what went wrong was you didn't prepare it. So you didn't prepare. That was the
No,
problem.
but okay, but you're saying, oh, you're saying, smoothness of delivery and all that sort of thing. But when I transcribed everything, I still had, as far as I'm concerned, all the sound arguments, and she had nothing. So she kind of bullshitted smoothly and convincingly and with her PowerPoint presentation, but it didn't make any sense.
Well,
So
yeah,
yeah.
that's what you think, but
Well, do you?
I
We
mean, if
could
the
go
delivery
through
is
it.
better, I don't know.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
you're
I
saying
love to.
I
Yeah.
don't mind conceding that she sounded, she gave the better presentation because she said she'd prepared all day or whatever, and she had a PowerPoint, which she read, and then she did all the formal things of thanking the moderators and whatever, and yeah, I'm sure she had the smoother delivery, but she make out her case that God is impersonal? And should a more confident manner by itself win the argument? That is the question, isn't it? I bet you don't remember
Yeah.
now. I bet you don't remember what any of the
No,
arguments are. And
of course
one
I
of the
do.
reasons why I went on and on and on about valid and sound arguments about the discussion you and John Vance had with Jay was that he was just saying, well, Con Ops won the argument. He did, and then I would say, well, how do what was the killer argument? And he couldn't tell me. He just said, oh, John Vance was talking rubbish and Connop said everything so well. And that's it, he couldn't remember any of the arguments. And I think anyone who wants to judge it has to say, well, Connop's won with his killer point or whatever, and John Vance couldn't come back with any convincing answer, and all he came up with was just, whatever, but no, there was none of that. Hello? Have you dropped out?
No, I haven't dropped out. There's something wrong. I need to.
What's wrong, dear?
I don't know. I don't know. Like there's something with my internet. I can also not scream because
I can hear you.
parents' basement. I'm still in my parents' basement.
But we're not talking about bad things. You don't have to say bad words.
I'm not saying bad words. It's just the volume.
Oh.
It's just the sheer volume. So I actually have to step outside.
Oh.
Sucks to be me.
But you could be, well, speaking normally on your phone, couldn't you?
Well, not really. They can hear,
Oh. Aren't they fast asleep?
No, they're not. They stay open. They stay up quite late as well. And then we have a little wine. And after a little wine, we go to bed. So I think they've gone to bed for like half an hour.
Uh-huh.
And I got a text message. It's making too much noise.
Oh.
That's it's very unfortunate.
Oh,
Jenny
right.
sent me the link, so I thought she would appear as well.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping she'd appear because now that she's got you, she needn't be so frightened of me. But really, I mean, I do let her speak. And also...
Yes, you do.
I do. It's not like and I've seen her with Duvid and she stops him from speaking in her latest... Did you watch the latest one? The post-JF one?
Yes, that was fascinating.
I thought it was really good. I couldn't believe how good it was.
Yeah, I just didn't see the whole appearance on JF. So,
We sound like lovers.
Yeah, whispering under the blankets. I mean, brings me back. What if my mommy will find out,
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I didn't see the JF.
That was quite boring, really, because it was really technical.
Do you think that Jenny's that JF is just ignoring a lot of what Jenny says, and he's just laughing and I don't know, keep the relationships okay? Because I sometimes have the feeling that that he doesn't even really bother engaging the argument,
Well, okay, this is my theory, which is that, for somebody with a channel like his, he's not going to get many women on, and when he gets a woman on, his viewers will be thrilled. Particularly when she's possibly attractive, I suppose. White, middle class, college educated, and the thing is, because the thing she says is so above the heads of most people, and she's visible, the thing is you'll just be looking at her.
Well, yes, I think
And then it's like I was speeding it up because I just speed it up to times twice the speed, and then I just saw this heaving bosom, if you know what I mean. It's suddenly just sort of more noticeable, all the kind of movements, and it's like yeah, Jen is blinking a lot too. In what seemed to be an agitated way, but I know. But if you slow it right down, it will seem much calmer. But if you speed it up, it's like you can see the agitation in the movements.
Oh, that is fascinating. I thought that she was really composed, or maybe she seems like very composed whenever JF is on. but maybe she's just trying to keep a straight face, and internally she's like boiling or irritated or whatever.
Well,
You
yeah,
know?
I suppose, in a state of arousal, as you might say, in that, and also the blinking is quite revealing of thinking. Blinking is thinking.
Yeah, I normally don't look at somebody's, I don't know, somebody's, like the details of what people give away if they're nervous, because I'm more of a sort of vibe person. I get that vibe. It comes sort of subconsciously, and I know that there are things that I'm registering. But I never say, "Oh, wow, that's like that one eye blink that gave away that she was nervous." So yeah, maybe I should just watch it again and focus on it, because I find it quite remarkable. JF, JF has very similar opinions that
It's
I
very
have.
similar what?
Well, he has very similar opinions on science to me, myself. But uh, for her to be composed when I'm having a discussion with her, that's very difficult for her. But yet with JF, she seems very calm and very reasonable and
Well,
very
I think,
agreeable.
yeah, but I think it's all about status, in a way, because it's like Jen has decided to defer to him and be polite to him. So once you've decided how you're going to behave towards somebody, then you can be calm. It's like, well, even if he's rude, I'm not going to react. Blah blah blah. And if only she could do it for everyone, but for the rest of us, we will have to take her swearing and her insults. And I'm
It's a
trying to
shame.
explain to her that it's actually better if she's polite to everyone, because one of the reasons why people think she's mad is because she's so outrageously rude.
Yeah, she has a real potty mouth, you know. I don't think it will
Eat a bag of
positively
dicks.
affect her.
That's a new
Yeah,
one. I really haven't heard that one before. It's like, well, where can I get them? Where do you get yours, Jen?
yeah. How did you come up with that stuff? You know, like to be honest, like I hang around sometimes with people that can be quite vulgar, but not that vulgar, you know. Especially like ladies, it's quite something. But yeah, but when she's sort of asked to put on a good performance, or when she's like really, I don't know, in a situation that she's maybe nervous or whatever, or she's on look for, where she has to behave well, she can definitely do it. So I'm saying, like, if you can do it, why don't you do it with everybody? What is this? Why be nasty to some people and just completely, I don't know.
Well, it's tactical, isn't it? It's like she has to assert authority over the people she disapproves of, and then she'll be appropriately deferential to people that she thinks you know she decides is okay to be deferential towards. But I think tactically that's mistaken, because obviously if you're going to be mean to people and rude to them, they're going to object to it and they're going to be rude back, and then your cult prestige will be endangered.
Yeah, no, I think it's a bad strategy as well. Also because people will know that you're disingenuous, right? Because
Yeah, and they'll
yeah,
actually want
you,
to trigger you on purpose, because then you'll completely lose your shit and start shouting and swearing. And then they'll laugh at it, because it's like you wanting Gandalf to spurg.
yeah, that's what we did, right? We tried to get him so upset that he
So I mean, on that basis alone, I think it's bad strategy anyway. And I think that's a thing. It's like, okay, there was a few. Okay, our first few streams together, she was still being polite, and I was still calling her Jennifer. I've listened to the old ones, and I got, oh my god, I sound like such a granny. But Anyway, she was still being civil to me.
You guys ever heard of something called reciprocity?
Yes.
Yeah, it's called when people are nice to you and respectful, you reciprocate.
I'm
And
I'm
when someone's a
always.
piece of shit, lying, libelous, snake tongue, deceiving bitch who sends you unsolicited bath pics, you tell her, go fuck yourself. You ever heard of that? You ever heard of something called reciprocity? Con-ops, you can attest to this, con-ops. You have been treated badly by me when you were out of line, and better when you were respectful. I'm very predictable, I think. So what's the point here exactly?
Sorry, my mommy was a bit upset because I made too much noise. So I'll have to mute for a second and then go out.
Okay. Jen, I try to be polite. You know I keep saying that's,
Look, I don't believe
I'd
you.
like you to be more collegiate, and now you're yelling at me again.
As an interrupter, as a defamer, I've already labeled you that way. Watch our old streams. I was perfectly cordial. You crossed the line. You were unable to respect boundaries, and now this is the consequence. You Jen, why aren't you nice to me? Claire, I don't care about you, okay? You get treated how you deserve to get treated. That is the mentally healthy thing to do. To just let yourself get steamrolled by shitbags like you, that's a mistake. Because people will think, well, Jen has no spine. So guess what? You get to serve as the example of why it's a fucking terrible idea to disrespect me. So enjoy it.
Yeah, it's okay. I can take it, you know. I'll just get more martyrdom points.
Clearly you can't, because you keep begging me to be polite and civil to you. You keep begging me for that.
I mean, for your own sake, so we can, talk about stuff that matters.
So much, because you care so much about my reputation. That's
Yeah,
why
I
you
do
call me
care
mentally
because,
ill all the time.
well,
That makes perfect sense.
I think your mental health could be measured by how civil you manage to be towards me.
I think you're crazy to think that.
Well, I think it's perfectly, if you could, behave like a normal person and be civil, then people will think you're
This is what
well.
normal people do. When people are pieces of shit like you are, liars, defamers, interrupters, disrespectful, yeah, they tend to resent them and then they treat them badly. That's normal, I'm afraid. Treating someone well when they've been atrocious towards you, it's not normal.
I do treat you quite well, don't I don't swear at you. I
You're
don't
lying.
shout at you.
You're lying. Right? We both know you're lying.
Have I shouted at you?
That is not the only way to mistreat someone. You can mistreat someone and never raise your voice once. Capiche? So the point is, you promised you were never going to mention anything mental health related with respect to me forever, and you went back on that. So you are a hypocrite and a liar. I don't have too high esteem for people like that. So, you can sit there and beg for civility, but your chance at civility, that ship sailed quite a while ago. You were given many, 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 many warnings. You ignored them all. This is the consequence. So really, you've only yourself to blame. Grow up.
So, what shall we debate morality, Jen?
No, we shan't, because we're not going to debate anything until there's a moderator. Because you are a piece of shit who interrupts and asks irrelevant leading questions to attempt to paint yourself as having reasonable doubt, wherein a fair debate would say you definitely lost. So get the moderator, and then we can talk about planning a debate. And once again, you can get completely defeated by me.
Connops has offered already. I thought you kind of sent him to say he'll be our moderator. Right, Jen? And I've agreed.
Yeah, we can have the morality debate now.
Yeah,
That's
we can have
fantastic.
it. We can do it now, Jen.
I'm not so sure if my battery will hold. I actually would like to have a bit more structured debate.
Of course, we love structured debates. Parasitic barbarians do not, because they like to be able to use underhanded, cheap tactics to manufacture consent. Right, Claire?
What do you mean by structured? I mean, we're just going to say my definition of morality is better than yours. That's the structure of our debate, isn't it?
That's rather sort of childlike, you know. My daddy has a better job than yours, you know.
I mean, okay, you can put it in a more sophisticated way, like Jen's definition, Claire's definition. Which do you prefer, and why, and which is better, and why, or something like that. You know, we can put it in a more grown-up
We could
way.
okay. We could start with 5 minutes of setting out sort of the narrative, things you want to tell, your argument, and then we can have a question and answer round.
Who will be answering? We will be.
Both, of course. I
Okay.
mean, we turn it
Yeah, yeah.
around, right?
It won't be you. You won't be asking us either of us
No,
questions.
no. I'll just make sure that you guys did. I don't know, cut each other's clitoris off. Like I wanted this
Okay.
to be civilized.
Yeah, I want to be civilized. So I'm ready to go now, Jen. Are you?
Yeah.
Jen.
Well,
Can
what's
we
the
set the scene?
structure? What's the structure?
Well, why don't the two of you decide on the actual debate? Or how would you say the so it's going to be morality. So what is the question going to be? What is the question for the debate? To be honest.
Well, whose definition is better and why?
Ah, okay. So why don't you guys maybe Claire should start and tell why do you think you define morality as you do and why that's useful and why that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So I think probably it has two components, the useful bit and the true bit, right? So I'm not so sure if we should separate these two out, right? So one one conception of morality can be true but still not useful. So I just hope we don't always confuse these two. So I'm not so sure how you guys want to approach that.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be a long debate. I mean, it's like, you know, but both of us take 5 minutes to explain our position and say why our definition is better than the other, and
Uh-huh.
then that's it. And then we might want to ask each other questions, but you know, it shouldn't take long.
All
Technically.
right. Well, out with it, Claire. Start.
All right.
You'll get 5 minutes.
Okay. Starting now.
Starting now, yeah. Why not?
Okay. So let me first outline what I understand to be Jen's definition of morality. Jen says that morality is the minimization of suffering, and my definition of morality is a system of rules, of do's and don'ts designed to keep the group together and apart from others. And I think under this definition, we will see that morality comes from religion. It is religion that gives us rules about what to do and what not to do. And you can compare the efficacy of different world religions in the status of the peoples who adhere to who are adherents to these religions. So, you know, obviously people should be identified according to what they believe, and what they believe dictates what they do. And although Jen's definition of minimizing suffering is would come under my system of morality. It only gives part of the picture and not the whole picture. I mean, obviously, we should be kind to people in our group and not hurt them unnecessarily. And but I think morality is a little more than being a kind of painkiller and analgesic to people suffering pain. You know, more is required to keep the group in existence and to deal with the internal and external enemies of the group. And this includes, you know, more laws and merely minimizing suffering. So that's my speech, really.
That's only 2.5 minutes, but that will do. That will do. Why don't you give your outline of why you think your own definition is great, Jennifer, and why Claire's is bad?
Has
You're not
Jen
gonna
dropped out?
start? I don't know.
Where are you, Jen?
Conups, I'll be honest, I'm having trouble hearing you. Are you saying that it's my turn to go?
Yeah, it's your turn to go.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for moderating Conups, and Claire for challenging me to a debate. So once again, we're faced with this question about what's the better morality? And as we all know, I've asserted it's that which minimizes the suffering, and Claire's is that which keeps the group together and apart from others. And a lot of people pay lip service to my definition of morality. I've heard it come from all across the board, but it's one thing to say it, and it's another thing to live it. And it's certainly not self-evident what actually minimizes the suffering. But let's have a look at what morality actually is. The universe itself is without meaning. Therefore, it cannot be said to possess an intrinsic morality. Therefore, we assert that all moral systems are essentially human constructs, which perform a particular function to varying degrees of success. Generally, morality is conformity to the ideals of a particular moral architecture, i.e. conformity to its laws and embodiment of its ideals. I furthermore assert that amongst all possible moral architectures, the best one is that which seeks to minimize the suffering. Now, that is a very complicated thing, because it sounds, well, yeah, sure, maybe there's a utilitarian answer to this, but actually, materialism does not end our suffering. In many ways, having a lot of material wealth serves as a reminder that it does not bring about the end of suffering. So we must turn to the opinions of traditional experts to get clear answers as to what actually minimizes the suffering. And as anyone who is enlightened will tell you, this is really the only way to end your suffering, through enlightenment. However, we acknowledge that not everybody in a society is ready to undertake that path. It is but a small minority who is ready to forego all other things in the interest of ending their own suffering. However, their efforts spill forth onto the greater society, and we can see the evidence of such efforts in my achievements, which are considerable. Therefore, I embody my own ideals. I truly believe that yogic knowledge is the source of all other knowledge, scientific, poetic, musical, artistic, and so forth. If we want to go into the nuts and bolts of the statecraft required to espouse this morality, now remember, we're not trying to get everybody enlightened, because we know that they don't really want that, and we can't really force people to do things against their will. Claire, mute yourself, please. Therefore, what we're doing is we're setting up a situation where if somebody decides to go on the path of enlightenment, which is very difficult, Claire, can you please mute yourself? I know you'd really like to win by cheating and distracting me with noise, but please mute yourself.
Continue. It's not that bad.
It's very distracting to me. So what we have to do is distinguish between people who are capable of practicing what's called master morality versus slave morality. Because as we know, some people, a lot of people, most people don't really have a tremendous amount of agency. They're more or less looking for the architectural framework of lifestyle to be more or less dictated to them. They want to conform to particular rules, and they want the associated status. because humans are essentially status seeking. Therefore, we have to parse the overall civilization into two groups: those capable of master morality, i.e., those who can be responsible for other people, and slave morality, those who simply obey. Slave morality is all about conformity, obedience, and really just going with the flow. Master morality is more complicated because that's when you're actually starting to answer the question of how do we meaningfully end suffering. That's where you have to start to be creative, making knowledge bases such as teaching math, etc., in order to enable people to understand more, because ultimately, eventually, we'd like everybody to be practicing master morality. So we want to get them on that path. And the way we do that is through a meritocracy dictated by master morality.
You need to wrap up.
Yeah, I know, it's 20, I still have 20 seconds.
All right.
So master morality is all about making rules. Slave morality is all about following rules. And which rules ought to be made and followed is determined by a debate between those practicing master morality. And that creates a culture, it creates a civilization that minimizes the suffering. Thank you very much. I only got interrupted like 6 times, so I guess that's pretty good for this crowd.
All right, but by whom were you interrupted again? By me or by the?
Well, you both interrupted me, so
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah. Interesting argument. I just don't think the latter part of the argument particularly pertains to the sort of the core issue. So you're
the moderator.
Yeah,
You're the moderator, Conops.
Yeah.
Is the debate over?
No,
Is the debate over, or are we continuing?
We're continuing the debate, but I want to.
So what's the structure?
Okay, I want to keep it a structure. So how to achieve this morality is not very relevant. I just want to know what it is. So okay, why don't you go and ask your questions now? I think it's might be a good way to start if we just let Claire begin and ask a good question to Jen.
Okay. So, you said, Jen, that...
There's no questions in a debate, Conops. You can ask us a question and we can both answer it, but she cannot ask me questions in a debate. No.
She can ask you a question.
I'm sorry. That is not how debates work. You can ask us both a question. We can both answer it, but I'm not going to answer her questions, I'm afraid. That is not how a debate works.
That is
I'm open-mouthed with...
They work. Actually, they're... What do you want to say?
The fact is, I don't have any questions for Claire because I don't care what she has to say, and I'm not going to put the brain power required to come up with a good question. You come up with a question, Conops, and we'll both answer it.
Well, maybe I'll just ask you this. Like, so Jen, what is the use of morality if it's just minimizing of suffering when your group goes extinct because of it? So is solely having a care harm morality enough to ensure the survival of the people that abide by that morality?
Yeah, you're getting to sort of the crux of the dharmic axioms, right? So the primary axiom is that which minimizes the suffering is the supreme good. But there's a secondary axiom that you also have to embrace, which is must attack and destroy that which does not seek to minimize the harm. So there is an inbuilt self-defense mechanism. It's just sometimes people get lazy and they don't abide by it. And this is what you can attribute the decay of Dharma to, is that people haven't been ruthless enough in defending it.
Okay, but doesn't principle A contradict principle B?
No, it actually makes it better because, as you said, if you only have principle A, you eventually go extinct because barbarian pirates like Claire won't abide by your principles. You have to have some way to make sure that everyone is abiding by the principle, and you do that by destroying that which seeks to undermine the principle of minimizing harm. That is not a contradiction, I'm afraid.
Well, I actually think that Claire should do this, but I can give you an example as well. So, what if the rest of the world is determined to erase Hinduism from the face of the earth? If you're abiding by your principle, killing those means the minimalization of harm. Huh? Killing the rest of the world is a bigger harm because you're killing more people, so you're inflicting more harm. But it does
You're
ensure
assuming that
survival.
you're assuming each human life has the same value, and indeed it does not. Some people are worth a lot more than others. And those who can carry forth civilization are worth infinity plebs who will simply eat everything and destroy it and turn everything into a desert.
Okay, well, you didn't quite set the conditions for what minimizing suffering actually means. Then, so you're not
It is
using
an
it in
ideal. It's
everyday
an
use.
ideal. It is an ideal. It is an ideal by which decisions are made. So you don't always know what decisions are going to come up. And when difficult decisions present themselves, you have to look at what is the harm that is going to be caused through your decision tree. And you choose the path which minimizes the suffering.
All right.
But you have to have this as a guiding principle, otherwise you're just going to be lost and trying to find your guiding principles elsewhere in written texts, which are necessarily degenerate, because the written word is always more degenerate than the
Okay, but this is
generalized
derating
knowledge it
derating the
represents.
conversation. We want to talk about the core issue, right? So, if it's indeed about slave morality, or if it's I don't know, like how do you achieve it, and whether it's Vedic or rather what is it like the written tradition is degenerate. So these things are not important for this debate, right? I mean, we're talking about what is
Well,
it
I
that
think
makes
they are. I think they are because all the rival systems of morality come from written tradition.
That's not necessarily the case. You could even
Okay,
say
well,
they've
give me
been
an example
pronounced
then.
orally and then have been transmitted scripturally. So, but
You
I'm
don't
not
have an
demanding.
oral tradition.
I'm not here
You don't
to
have an oral
debate. I
tradition,
just want
though.
to moderate because I think I'm debating you guys. I can also ask Claire one question. So if
Yeah, go ahead.
all right, so Claire, if it's indeed true that morality is about keeping the group together, right? So how would that work in individual morality? How people would behave towards another? If you put your logic of groups, if you transplant that to the logic of individuals, then it's a society that nobody wants to live in, right? Because everybody will be out for themselves, will be about the preservation of their sort of self-interest, just like people are about the preservation of group interest, and then they might preemptively kill, rape, or steal. Would you
Well,
like that?
well, Conops, obviously, I spoke of morality as being a system of rules for the members of the group. So there would be rules against homicide and theft and sexual immorality. So, and there would be, you know, courts and law enforcement. So that would be how morality would be enforced. And I think people can agree that killing people results in themselves being killed. So you'll find that even murderers, even convicted murderers, will never say there shouldn't be a law against murder.
Yeah,
Because
but
they yes.
Claire, you can actually kill other people to keep your group together, right? So you can imagine a situation where you have to go out and kill another group, and that will keep your group together.
That would be war, yes.
That would be war, yes, definitely. But yet, in individual cases, you wouldn't allow a morality like that. So the morality you have for inter-group dynamics is different from the morality you propose for people internally in a state. So I think that's rather inconsistent.
Well, basically, if war were to be declared on another group, it would have to be declared by the leader, and the leader would have to be would have to have the authority to do such a thing. It can't just be, anyone in the group that says, well, let's go and kill members of the other group. And really, at the end of the day, it's all about hierarchy and structure and constitution and foreign policy, and of course this relates to government, politics, and morality. And obviously, we should choose, the system of rules that is most comprehensive and deals with all of these things.
Yeah, but that's not an answer to my question, and it's not even getting to the core of the philosophical issue. So you're just like Jenny. You're just talking about like the practical aspects of it, and I thought we were having a philosophical discussion about it.
Well,
So I want to know, why is your morality, your definition of morality, different from different on the individual level than on the group level?
Well, it's about what the rules are. So you have to first decide, what set of rules you want to choose. You could, be a society that says sexual immorality. What does that mean? As long as we're consenting adults, we can have sex with whoever. And then there will be, another group who says, no, we can only have sex with people that we're married to, and we can only marry a member of the opposite sex. And marriage is for legitimate children. So if you have this definition of marriage, you won't, go the way of sexual liberation, and basically, societies that are patriarchies that where most parents are married parents will have greater social stability and less crime than a matriarchy, and that's what I've been saying for quite a while. So it all boils down to gender relations and the currency of gender relations, which is sex.
Well, you could argue that, but that doesn't mean that your philosophical system is not inconsistent. I think your definition is inconsistent because it's contradictory.
I don't quite see what it contradicts.
Well, it contradicts the question of sort of having universal laws. So in a society, you would have universal laws that would apply to everybody.
Yes.
Yet in a state system, you won't have that system. You say might is right, the survival of the fittest, and I think that's very inconsistent.
Sorry. I'm just saying. You'd have all those rules. For that particular society, and then you said something else. I didn't quite catch that.
Yeah. So you're saying for a society, within a society, there you have the principle of Jesus Christ. All this like soft talking is really affecting my speech. So you would say that in a society itself, you have universal laws that apply to everybody.
Equality before the law.
Equality to a certain extent for the law, right? So you wouldn't say one Muslim can just kill another Muslim just because he's, I don't know, of a higher status or whatever, right? Yet, if we're talking about groups and warfare, you said it would be okay to declare war on another state and get women as war booty. We've said this publicly.
So, but I mean, war is a fact of life, isn't it? Other people will declare war on you, and you declare war on them, and so you have to have a mechanism to enable it.
True, but that still makes your definition inconsistent.
Inconsistent with what, though? I don't quite see why you keep saying that.
The problem is you have made an argument that the definition of morality is keeping the group together, right? So everything for the group to keep the group together. Yet,
for the benefit of the group, yeah.
Yeah, for the benefit of the state. Yet within a state, you wouldn't say everything for the benefit of the individual, because you know that doesn't work. But that makes it inconsistent, because what morality, as if you apply it to a group level, you need a completely different definition when you transplant that to the level of the individual.
I'm afraid I still don't understand. I mean, I always see, see nations as a kind of macrocosm of the individual. So,
Okay, but then if that's the case, then why can one person not go out and rape a woman, but can a state go out, declare war, and rape women? But why do you have two um, different standards for this?
well, all I'm saying is that, if a foreign army invades your country, you would expect your women to be raped, and therefore, in order to avoid this sort of situation happening, you have to have armed forces, an army to, repel any invading army, and you're more likely to fight a successful defensive war if you're a patriarchy, because men and women think about things in different ways. So women will probably welcome the foreigner, find it more interesting, while men will be more racist and xenophobic because their interests are directly affected. So, and obviously for the balanced individual, that there should be a balance of feminine and masculine, because there is danger if you are too warlike and you keep fighting wars thinking it's wonderful and great, and then eventually you will exhaust yourself as Athens did, by fighting too many wars and by falling into too many Thucydides traps. So yeah, I mean, even as an individual, you can say, well, I'm big and tough and I'm mean and I know how to fight, and then you go around fighting people and you make lots of enemies, and then eventually, they might gang up and on what kill you or hurt you. So your own sense of prudence should tell you that you shouldn't make unnecessary enemies, and this is the same for nations too. If you hate all your neighbours and they're all around you and you've done mean things to all of them, they might one day gang up against you and cause your downfall.
Okay, well then, what is wrong with a United Nations system where you have all states adhering to the same set of laws, and where nobody is allowed to pillage or conquer another nation?
Well, in theory, it should work, but of course, the strongest nation will end up having its way. So currently, it's America, and and the same thing happened with the League of Nations, and
That's true, but then if you're agreeing with that in theory that could work, how is that to be? How would you say? How can you bring that into conformity with the idea that morality is what's best for the group?
well, okay, you already know that my idea is, there should be global secular Quranism. So broadly, the world over, people are agreed about, how they should behave, and particularly as far as war is concerned, only defensive wars are considered Islamic. But then, another kind of war where jizya can be exacted, it is only possible if you have a successful invasion. But then the psychology of fighting the defensive war is quite different to fighting an offensive war.
No,
And
that's true. But look, you're just talking about the jizya, the poll tax, the 20% poll tax that conquered peoples have to pay.
well, I
If
wouldn't. It would be from their GDP. It wouldn't be individuals having to pay it in a kind of noticeable way. It would just come out of GDP.
okay, but that's not where I want to go with this question.
Mm.
If that is the case on an individual level, so you get 20% of somebody's income if you smash his place in and you occupy his house, how would you think about something like that?
Well, obviously he's going to fight you. Um,
Yeah, but you think that's a moral system?
but the
He's
moral
preserving
system.
it. He's no, but Claire, he's preserving his own interest.
Yeah, yeah. So he's going to fight you, and nobody's going to let you invade their country without a fight.
Yeah,
But if you want to
but you
organize
want
it,
that. You want that principle to be universalizable. You want that principle to be principle that people adhere to. If not, then you don't think that individual interests dictate morality. And if you don't, then I'm still asking myself, why do you treat groups so much differently? And how could you unify that with having this one idea that morality is group interest?
That morality is what?
Is what is in group interest? Well, it's in favor of the group.
Well, obviously,
Keep the group together.
I mean, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So obviously, if you follow this religion for a long time and you're still around, it obviously means it worked. And if you tried something else like communism and it's all tried and failed, then obviously it hasn't. So this is a rule of thumb in deciding what works, because political ideologies are also moral systems. I mean, communism is a moral system because the assumption is that the workers should get a, what is it? Marx said the value of something should be measured by how much effort it's been put into the making of it, right? There's a special term for it which I've forgotten, but of course, really, you can put a lot of effort into making something, but maybe it's no use and people won't buy it, and so the market kind of balances the ultimate price of something. So I mean, I suppose that that's why art is so very difficult to value, and the only way you can value art is like, well, how much people are prepared to pay for it, and it doesn't seem to make any sense. But I've actually forgotten why we're talking about art.
Yeah, I think you're derailing.
Oh yeah. I can remember that. So we were talking about Marxism, and his idea that it's the value, the price of something is should be based on how much effort is put into it. But then it's not fair, because you can put a lot of effort into something and nobody wants to buy it, and you can't force people to buy the thing that is no use to them. So then we're talking about the market, and Marxism doesn't like free markets, and they want to rig the price. And basically, what makes something last is how people don't rebel against it. So if it doesn't go really, really wrong, people will rebel against it. And I guess religions tend to last longer than political ideologies like Marxism, fascism, and Nazism. And maybe we should.
But maybe you have to be careful, because within, for example, fascism, National Socialism, but also communism, there are big contradictions. Fascism, for example, talks about might is right. Well, it ended up that the Western allies, they won the war, and they bombed Dresden. And if you think might is right, then don't whine about, I don't know, all these sort of human victims of these bombings.
Well, I think the idea of might is right, didn't come about because of Mussolini. I'm sure that's an old saying. I think it went all the way back to Athens, right? The Melian dialogue.
Melian dialects, exactly.
Yeah. So I guess some people think, well, I can get away with it. I mean, gangsters think that they can get away with it when they extort you for protection money or whatever it is that they do.
But that's interesting. But okay, so they extort you for protection money. So what makes secular Quranism with its jizya better than a gangster?
I suppose in theory all countries have behaved like gangsters. I mean, the British, behaved like drug dealers towards the Chinese.
True, but what? Okay, true, but why do you want that?
I don't want that necessarily, and I think in history, you only get waves of invasion when there is a youth bulge. So you can think of the Highland clearances when those a lot of Scottish people were basically kicked out by their own people of their own tribe, saying, well, there ain't any room for you now. You've got to go, you've got to leave Scotland to make your fortune. You've got to leave Scandinavia to, rape and pillage other people because there's no space for you now. and this happens. It happens in prides of lions, and so I guess if you have a certain bulk, I mean, but the British Empire expanded because of all these people who were born who didn't have anywhere to go, and then they had to be made to fight naval wars and explore new places. And even the Ottoman Empire that kind of expanded at the cost of Europe forced the Europeans to go west and to explore, to finally get to the New World, because they couldn't get past the Ottoman Empire at the time when it was strong. So I guess all these events kind of dictate events in the end, and then it comes back. You get rich, you get lazy, you become degenerate, and you become weak, and people see you've got all your stuff, and you're not all there because you can't get it together to defend what you've acquired, and then they come and take it off you. And I guess this is a kind of cycle of history.
Yeah, no, yes, but this is also a cycle for individuals. So people might get complacent, might get lazy, but that doesn't mean you can go into their house and trash their kitchen,
No, I mean, obviously we shouldn't become burglars whenever we feel a bit poor, but I suppose in the world of realpolitik, people think they can get away, and really to be weak is to invite attack. So obviously we should keep our heads together and avoid being weak, because if people think, oh, that they're an aging society, they're not having enough children, and whatever children they have, they don't teach or parent properly, they're a bit stupid, we'll just come in and con them out of whatever they have, and maybe even invade them, because they won't be able to fight back.
Yeah, but what you see in history is also that you have coalitions of people who enforce law. So, but famously, after Chamberlain gave the war guarantee to Poland, Britain acted on it, and it meant the end of the German Reich. So you could also try and focus more on enforcement of universal rules instead of saying, all right, might is right for every group, and every group needs to preserve itself.
Yeah.
That is a morality that is just inviting. It's inviting, legitimizing rape and plunder.
Well, I mean, we have to accept that women do get raped and men do get killed in war, and obviously it's a serious business, and we should not be weak, because to be weak isn't to invite attack, and if you want to attack another country, we have to make sure that we have the resources to do it easily and successfully. Otherwise, don't bother. So this would be the calculation of most generals, I think, when people still did these sorts of things. But I'm glad you mentioned European history, because all these wars, the First World War, the Second World War, completely un-Islamic. When you think of the reasons why Britain declared war on Germany in the First World War, and on the Second
the
World War.
Ottoman Empire was a major player in the First World War.
Who?
The Ottoman Empire was a major player in the First World War.
I think it wanted to be neutral, but it kind of felt it had to choose its side for geopolitical reasons, and so it ended up supporting the Central Powers. Just because Germany and Italy were nearer to them than Britain and France. So sometimes we can't Turkey couldn't just sort of move to be closer to Britain by they can't help it. It's like they're just wherever they are.
This is really not a fair debate. Claire's getting like 3 times as much time as I did.
Sweetie, I thought that we're just turning into the free form.
Well, no, this is supposed to be a debate, and if it's not a debate anymore, we should say the debate is over.
Oh, okay. I'm happy, for you to ask me questions if you wanted to. I have questions for you, Jen.
Yeah.
And the debate is over, because the debates do not consist of debaters asking each other questions. They consist of the moderator asking them questions, and then alternatingly answering them.
No, they do, but I have no further questions, not either for you nor for Claire, because I can't think of any. I think I've gotten to the core that both systems are not perfect. They're problematic in their own ways.
I don't understand what the problem is with my system. You said it's impossible to defend the principle with violence because that contradicts the axiom, but that's false.
No, it doesn't. It is false. It does contradict the axiom.
Well, you do understand that if everybody doesn't abide by the... You're the one who pointed out the flaw. You said if you abide by the least harm principle, then other people who don't will eventually overtake you. You made that point yourself.
Yeah.
And I said the way that you can deal with that is by only allowing this system of morality to people who have reciprocity with it.
Yeah, but you live in a world with other people in it, right? So
yeah, and things called boundaries and borders exist.
I get that.
And you put a border between yourself and the people who refuse to abide by this principle. You put a border between you and you defend the border. Yeah. And anyone who tries to cross the border, you kill them. That's how it works.
Again, we are actually really on the same page, but that doesn't mean I don't see any problem.
But I don't know what problems you've brought to my attention, because in my mind it seems pretty flawless.
No, it's not flawless because people won't abide by it. That's the problem. So people say, like,
yeah,
I don't want to join. So
okay,
you can't say this is morality and then violate it.
Yeah, some people will want to join, some people won't, and those who won't have the privilege of that government style.
Of course, I understand that on a practical level, but in a philosophical way, it's inconsistent.
It's not inconsistent to demand that people abide by the same axioms as you if they're going to be blessed by your governance.
No,
it's a privilege.
Yeah, but you're going to violate your own principles to defend yourself. That's the problem.
It's not a violation of a principle to defend yourself, Conops. Minimizing suffering is not the same thing as rolling over so other people can come in and rape you, like Claire's morality, that is not different in any way, shape, or form from pirate morality.
I agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
What's pirate morality?
Conops, the main difference here is that Claire is looking for an empire, and I am not looking for an empire. I'm not interested in ruling over people who don't abide by my axioms. I'm interested in defending myself from those people and getting them the hell away from me.
Yeah,
and putting a border between us.
Yeah, I get that.
That is heavily defended.
Yes, I get that, and I totally agree with you. Actually, I have the same kind of morality that you have in this sense, but I still think even my own system allows for inconsistencies. So if I say morality is the minimization of suffering, and then if the whole world would invade me, I would still fight back.
Well, sure. It makes sense to fight back.
I would nuke every state in the world if they would threaten security.
Well, I'm right there with you. You have to be very harsh with people who don't share your principles, because they will eventually just rape you, just like India got raped and continues to get raped in the modern day.
So I think
by people like Claire.
A little back and forth. I think that's interesting. And
then the debate is over. No, if that's the case, then the debate is over. Yeah, I'm afraid there is no back and forth in a formal debate. I'm afraid. Here's the problem. Claire always cuts me off and filibusters, and that is not something I'm going to tolerate. So either the debate is over, or it's not over, but I'm not going to do a back and forth because I simply don't care enough about Claire to come up with questions. And I don't think she will answer them in good faith either. It's a waste of my time, frankly.
I think she's trying to. She's trying to work out the sort of weird inconsistencies in her belief, but I think she's trying to. Should give her a bit of a break.
Yeah.
I don't take unsolicited advice from the plebs. And Claire, shut the fuck up, you whore. Okay? You've treated me absolutely terribly. You deserve my contempt. So is the debate over or not?
I think that was a beautiful closing word, so graciously uttered from the supreme dictator, yeah.
I embody my own principles. So the people who are sympathetic to my axioms and principles, they get a certain degree of respect. Those who trounce my principles and spit on my reputation
What
don't.
is it that they can swallow a bucket of dicks, or what was it? I forget your insult. But ladies, I want to listen to more of you, but I have to actually go to my house, go back to my basement where my mommy will take care of me.
Okay.
And yeah, it was interesting.
Thank.
But I think back and forth would be a great idea.
I know. I was hoping for that. Thank you, Connots, for moderating and asking your questions.
You're welcome. I
Okay.
hope yeah, I did okay. All right, ciao,
Okay.
girls.
Bye. Good night. So Jen, don't go, or has she gone? Jen. Hey Jen.
So, debate has to be moderated. Questions should probably be picked in advance because Conops wasn't really able to moderate that very well at all. And it just ended up being you rambling about how your morality is indistinguishable from pirate morality, which we all
What is pirate morality, Jen?
Let me know when you have an actual good moderator, and then we can resume the debate. Until then, I'm just not going to waste my time.
Who is a good moderator? Has she gone?
You pick the moderator. I don't care.
Well, I thought you picked Connops.
You're not a rival. You're not a rival to me.
I thought
okay, you want me to pick the moderator so that you can turn around and say, Jen rigged the debate. Jen rigged the debate. And now you're off to your same old of interrupting me constantly. So let's have a debate. You pick the moderator, and let's pick the questions in advance so that it's above the belt, above board, no hitting below the belt. Good to go. That's fair. Anything other than that is just you trying to railroad me, and I'm just not going to tolerate it.
When have I ever railroaded you, Jen? You always talk more than I do at a louder volume too.
You have so little self-control that you were unable to stop Conops after he had gone on obviously way longer than he talked to me for, and you just kept on blabbing.
Well, so we were just talking.
You want to filibuster and you want to interrupt what you just did, so I'm heading out.
Oh well. Oh well. So people in the chat, 12 viewers in the chat, how do you think it went? Is there anybody there? Have you all gone? It would appear so. Well, I can't even ask you then. All right. I'll tell you how I thought it went. I thought I made my points very clearly. I was very happy to answer questions from Jen and Conops about my definition. I don't think anybody can say that, my conclusion that religion lasts longer than man-made political ideologies is wrong. I didn't get a definition of pirate morality. Is it something that Jen made up? I mean, if I did a search, would I find a definition of pirate morality? I guess it's something about, like gangster morality, like omerta, honour amongst thieves and that kind of thing. So we do see that bands of men banding together for a particular purpose, even if it is for a criminal enterprise, needs to needs to have rules like, well, you're not allowed to snitch on other people. You've always got to follow the orders of the leader or whatever it is. So we have to think of the purpose of the thing. It's like you could have a band of highwaymen, a band of bank robbers, or an army, or, a nation. So we need really to know the purpose for which the group was formed. And as for nation states, well, if you're a defined piece of territory and you have people living in it who want government, then, for your own sake, you should form a government so you cater for the needs of people, young and old, male and female, rich and poor. So together as a people, you cooperate to make the life of everyone, better than it would otherwise be. So, so we're really talking about civilization, and obviously when primitive tribes people who were nomadic would just move from place to place, having eaten all the stuff in one particular area, they would just move on to another, and probably it wasn't that environmentally friendly. But once they settled down and started farming, eventually they produced enough of a surplus to allow cities to be formed, so that people living in high concentrations in the city can just buy their stuff from the countryside. So that meant a different form of human organization, and I think this would make life more varied and just give you more options. So you can be a baker, a carter, and whatever. It just increases human choice, and you can live in the town or the country. And as civilizations advance, there's just greater individual choice. But ultimately, the building blocks of any society is sexual morality, because sexual morality is about perpetuating the group, because if you don't have babies, then obviously your group is going to die. So the very least your group should forbid would be gay sex, right? Because obviously if you just divided your society into all male groups or all female groups, and it'll just die out in a few decades, and that's not the idea. So but then you also want to control how they interact with each other. So if there's too much free mixing, as the Muslims say, then the trouble is that you will get men who will become feminized, and men and women who don't respect each other's gender uniqueness will only find themselves in contempt of each other. And this is what happens if you have co-ed schools, and then you teach adolescents sex education. You tell them it's okay to do it as long as you're in a trusting relationship, and so you'll just get more of them having sex with each other, and not taking their relationships seriously, and until they just cannot bond anymore, until the very idea of marrying a member of the opposite sex and staying together for the sake of the children just fills them with horror, and they can't even do it, not even white nationalists. And so, you've come to a stage of your civilization that is, well, are you going to fix it, or just pretend that everything is okay and nothing needs to be done? And I'm afraid, you're getting to the stage of, well, just pretend everything's okay then, because we can't even think of marrying a member of our own of our own race, and staying with them for the sake of the children. It's just too horrible. We'd rather be gay. We'd rather be transgender. And then, obviously, you'll need laws to correct this kind of hopeless attitude. And then, if you're like me and you try to correct it and nobody wants to listen because they can't bear the thought of the correction, then you know that your civilization is on a downward trajectory. But what I wanted to talk about before Jen interrupted was all the wars the European nations fought. The First World War, Second World War, and they were un-Islamic. So for Britain, both wars that they declared on Germany was un-Islamic. It's like, well, Germany was minding its own business. It was only attacking France, and in 1870 the Germans, besieged Paris, and Britain didn't lift a finger to help the French at all. But on this occasion it felt it had to join in because it didn't want Germany to rise as a power, as a continental power. Are you allowed to declare war on countries that you think will rival you in economic power? Is that permissible? Well, not according to the Quran. So on both occasions, it wasn't allowed. What about the wars Hitler declared? Obviously, it wasn't, it's not approved of by the Quran. He basically wanted to help himself to a bit of land from Russia, who's got lots of land. And, well, the point is that he didn't succeed, and really he took too many risks. He thought the British were going to be reasonable about Poland, and of course, Poland was the final straw. The British weren't going to fight Germany over Czechoslovakia and Austria, but they were over Poland. So obviously, Poland was the last straw, but technically it was still Germany's backyard. But Britain was nervous of Germany's ascent to becoming a major continental power in Europe, and therefore thought that the only way to stop Germany was to wage a successful war against it. And I'm afraid that's not allowed in the Quran. I mean, there's lots of things that were quite terrible that happened that I think would have been completely unnecessary if the countries concerned were already Muslim. So I was reading about the wars of the Reformation this evening. And all the stuff about Henry beheading his wives and fussing around with the Pope and all that. And you think, if he'd already been Muslim, it would have been okay for him to have another wife, because he could have had up to 4. So he wouldn't have needed the Pope's permission to have another wife after Catherine of Aragon was too old to give him another child. So, I'm kind of curious about how, things would have gone if Henry said, well, if the Pope's not going to give me my annulment, I'm just going to be Muslim, and then I can have up to 4 wives, and then I can sire a son to inherit my kingdom. Why didn't he do that? Who knows? I mean, I suppose it's possible that, if he converted England to Islam, all the other continental countries would adopt it. Or might they be thinking, well, why didn't we do that? But they were having their wars of religion on the continent too, and then you think, well, if all these European countries were already Muslim, then the terrible, terrible wars of the Reformation would not have been necessary at all. Now, one of the strange things about, well, I thought it was strange anyway, was how Christians used to argue about their religion. And I've got a link I could go through with you if you're interested. But I'll just talk about the bit where all these people, these Christians, were arguing over how they should conceive of God, which I find totally fascinating. But I don't think anybody really cares now, because the assumption is that God doesn't exist, and to fight over how we should think of him is really retarded. But when you think of all this fighting over nothing at all, I mean, because they were actually arguing about the Trinity, because if they had the view of the oneness of God, then they wouldn't be fighting over rituals and the wording of the Book of Common Prayer and all that kind of thing. So, I'm going to do this because it kind of helps me to read stuff and explain it to you. So, under the heading of changing religious ideas, it begins. The Reformation was a clash of two opposed schemes of salvation. The Catholic Church taught that the contrite person could cooperate with God towards their salvation by performing good works. So basically, if you do good works, you're more likely to get to heaven. So medieval Catholic worship was centered on the Mass, the Church's offering of the sacrifice of Christ's body and blood. The Mass was also an offering of prayer by which the living could help souls in purgatory. So that was a Catholic view. And the Catholic view was that, just by performing the Eucharist, you're actually helping all these souls in purgatory. But Jews don't talk about purgatory, and neither do Muslims. It's a holy Christian invention, invented presumably to benefit the parasitic priesthood. So Protestants had a different view. Protestants taught that fallen humanity was helpless and under condemnation until given the grace of God through faith. Now, what does that mean? So basically Protestants were saying, well, the Catholic Church with its ridiculous rituals of Mass and the act of eating the body of Christ and drinking his blood won't help you get to heaven. You have to actually believe, and that is how you get to heaven. They believed the Catholic emphasis on purgatory was an obstacle to true faith in God and identification of the Mass with Christ's sacrifice, a blasphemous perversion of the Eucharist. In place of Mass, Protestant worship was centered on the Bible, to them the only road to faith in Christ, either read or presented in sermons. And there was something called Lollards, and I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I don't know much about the Lollards. So, the Lollard movement was a pre-Protestant Christian religious movement that existed from the mid-14th century to the 16th century English Reformation. It was initially led by John Wycliffe, a Roman Catholic theologian who was dismissed from the University of Oxford in 1381 for criticism of the Roman Catholic Church. The Lollards' demands were primarily for reform of Western Christianity. They formulated their beliefs in the 12 conclusions of the Lollards. Oh dear. It's going to be complicated. So what do they believe? So it's something about the Eucharist. Oh, it's not a very good explanation here. Maybe I can find a simpler one for you guys. Okay. There's 12 conclusions of the Lollards, so I can just read all 12 to you. The first conclusion, state of the Church. The first conclusion asserts that the English Church has become too involved in affairs of temporal power, led by the bad example of the Church of Rome. Second conclusion, the priesthood. The second conclusion asserts that the ceremonies used for the ordination of priests and bishops are without scriptural basis or precedent. Third conclusion, clerical celibacy. The third conclusion asserts that the practice of clerical celibacy has encouraged sodomy among the clergy. Oh dear. This is quite... okay, it doesn't surprise me, but, this is sort of pretty obvious, really. Fourth conclusion, transubstantiation. The fourth conclusion asserts that the doctrine of transubstantiation leads to idolatrous worship of everyday objects, the communion wafers. Yeah. Of course it does. Yeah, and it's just ridiculous, isn't it? Saying, oh, but once it enters our mouths, it becomes the flesh of Christ. Fifth conclusion, exorcisms and hallowings. The fifth conclusion asserts that the exorcisms and hallowings carried out by priests are a sort of witchcraft and are incompatible with Christian theology. So I guess exorcisms, we all know what that is, having seen The Exorcist, but what are hallowings? Blessings. When a special meaning is a blessing consisting of a ceremony and prayers performed in the name and with the authority of the church by a duly qualified minister, by which persons or things are sanctified as dedicated to divine service, or by which certain marks of divine favour are invoked upon. Okay. Sixth conclusion, clerics and secular offices. The sixth conclusion asserts that it is inappropriate for men who hold high office in the church to simultaneously hold positions of great temporal power. Yeah, conflict of interest. Seventh conclusion, prayers for the dead. The seventh conclusion asserts that prayers for the souls of specific individual deceased persons is uncharitable, since it implicitly excludes all the other blessed dead who are not being prayed for, and that the practice of requesting prayers for the dead by making financial contributions is a sort of bribery that corrupts the church. Oh my goodness, it's too late for me to become a Lollard now. Eighth conclusion, pilgrimages. The eighth conclusion asserts that the practices of pilgrimage and the veneration of relics at best are ineffectual for spiritual merit and at worst approach idolatry in their worship of created objects. Ninth conclusion, confession. The ninth conclusion asserts that the practice of confession for the absolution of sins is blasphemous, because only God has the power to forgive sins, and because if priests did have that power, it would be cruel and uncharitable of them to withhold that forgiveness from anyone in the world, even if they refused to confess. 10th conclusion, war, battle and crusades. The 10th conclusion asserts that Christians should refrain from warfare, and in particular that wars given religious justification, such as crusades, are blasphemous because Christ taught men to love and forgive their enemies. 11th conclusion, female vows of continence and abortion. The 11th conclusion asserts that women in the church who have made vows of celibacy are having sex, becoming pregnant, and then seeking abortions to conceal the fact that they have broken their vows, a practice which the text strongly condemns. 12th conclusion, arts and crafts. The 12th conclusion asserts that Christians are devoting too much of their energy and attention to the making of beautiful objects of art and craft, and people should simplify their lives and renew their devotion to godliness by refraining from unnecessary endeavours. Well. I'm glad I discovered that. Is there anyone left now? So let us continue. Mind people, oh, you're still here. How nice, how nice. Yeah, I don't think it was properly done. I wish Jen would just do the Ask FM thing. Then people will, people can slow right down and understand the words properly and ask questions and whatever. But Jen's only interested in grandstanding. Yeah, and it's a bit unsporting of Jen to not allow questioning. Because it's like there's so many holes in the argument that I wanted to ask her about. Particularly that point about, the slave morality and master morality, and she would be master morality, deciding, who's going to have slave or who's going to follow slave morality and who's going to follow master morality. And then she contradicted herself, saying, well, she wants to make everyone follow master morality, and it's complete nonsense. So if everybody's a master, then who's going to work for the master, for the masters? Well, I suppose Connaught's what ideally, if I'm not allowed to ask questions of Jen, she doesn't want to ask me any questions yet, then you will have to ask us very tough questions, and maybe you didn't ask them. But I had fun. Oh, good. Christy Ramsey got my point about Henry VIII being Muslim, and then, and all the horrors and bloodletting of the English Reformation would not have been necessary. Lauren, thank you for saying you're interested in converting to secular Quranism. You don't. It's not. It's not a religion. It's just a legal system. So you can, well, just say you support it, and you can be whatever religion you want. You're saying, you could go around supporting it by saying it's a one-size-fits-all legal system designed to accommodate atheists to polytheists, guaranteeing freedom of belief while restoring and protecting the patriarchy. So that's it. And then people can say, they'll be saying, oh, but so you're not going to forcibly convert us and cut off our clitorises and, or whatever they like to think Muslims do. Okay, I'm still going to go on about the English Reformation because I'm really quite interested in these things. So, Lollards anticipated some Protestant teachings. Unlike Protestants, the early Lollards lacked access to the printing press and failed to gain a foothold among the church's popular communicators, the friars. Unable to gain access to the levers of power, the Lollards were much reduced in numbers and influence by the 15th century. They sometimes faced investigation and persecution and rarely produced new literature after 1450. Lollards could still be found, especially in London and the Thames Valley, in Essex and Kent, Coventry and Bristol, and even in the north, and many would be receptive to Protestant ideas. Those of you who are Muslim would notice that Lollardism would be seen as moving towards Islam. Actually, I could do a stream about that. More respectable and orthodox calls for reform came from Renaissance humanists such as Erasmus, who lived in England for a time, John Collar, Dean of St. Paul's, and Thomas More. Humanists downplayed the role of rites and ceremonies in achieving salvation and criticised the superstitious veneration of relics. Erasmus and Collett emphasised a simple personal piety and a return ad fontes of Christian faith. It means back to the sources of Christian faith, the scriptures as understood through textual and linguistic scholarship. Collett's commentaries on the Pauline epistles emphasize double predestination and the worthlessness of human works. Now, what on earth is double predestination? Yeah, it gets more and more complicated. I really wish that they would do a documentary on it. So basically, this loosening of the power that the Catholic Church held over all the European monarchs was arguably a kind of national self-consciousness, of nationalism even. Some people in the UK have compared Brexit with the break from Rome. So, yeah, the last time there was something that was the equivalent of Brexit was when, the Pope exerted his power over all the monarchs of Europe. So basically, Luther was saying, it's enough to get you to heaven if you believe. But I guess for Catholics, you have to believe that, all the Trinity stuff, and then when you're about to die, you've got to call the priest in, and you have to pay him, and then he'll, sprinkle holy water over you, and give you extreme unction and the last rites. So all this stuff about purgatory is really, they basically thought of an idea to frighten people and make them pay. It's a way of monopolizing people's fear of hell. So creating the idea of purgatory why do you think the Catholic Church conceived of the idea of purgatory as a way of squeezing more money out of its flock, right? Because Jews don't use it, and neither do Muslims. So it continues. Only faith itself, a gift from God, can secure the grace of God. Justification by faith alone threatened the whole basis of the Roman Catholic penitential system with its doctrine of purgatory, prayer for the dead, indulgences, and the sacrificial character of the Mass. Early Protestants portrayed Catholic practices such as confession to priests, clerical celibacy, and requirements to fast and keep vows as burdensome and spiritually oppressive. Not only did purgatory lack any biblical basis according to Protestants, but the clergy were accused of using fear of purgatory to make money from prayers and masses. Catholics countered that justification by faith alone was a license to sin. English Catholicism was strong and popular in the early 1500s, and those who held Protestant sympathies would remain a religious minority until political events intervened. Protestant ideas were popular among some parts of the English population, especially among academics and merchants with connections to continental Europe. The first open demonstration of support for Luther took place in Cambridge in 1521, when a student defaced a copy of the papal bull of condemnation against Luther. Also at Cambridge was a group of reform-minded university students that met at the White Horse Tavern from the mid-1520s. It's funny, isn't it? People killing themselves over stuff that people now just think of as completely stupid. Oh yeah, and when I was reading all this stuff, I thought of this verse in the New Testament. The sword verses of the Bible, you could say, of the New Testament. Yeah, it's that verse that Jesus said, when he asked people to sell your cloak and buy a sword. So this is in Luke 22, verse 36 to 38. He said to them, "But now if you have a purse, take it, and also a bag, and if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. It is written, and I'm thinking of a verse that tells, that says, I'm going to cause you all to fight each other. I come with a sword. Yeah, that one. Matthew 10:34. Do not assume that I have come to bring peace. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. So not that peaceful, huh? For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Was he perhaps talking about the Reformation? A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Not very nice. Then he continues, anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. Anyone who welcomes you welcomes me, and anyone who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet as a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever welcomes a righteous person as a righteous person will receive a righteous person's reward. Yeah, and then if you go down further on the Wikipedia entry, it gets more and more complicated. I guess people, students, pupils who did history had to learn all about that. I think once upon a time, if you wanted to do law, you had to learn British history. I didn't have to, but I see it's necessary now because a lot of English law does come from all this stuff. So basically, a lot of the money of taxes collected will go straight to the Pope. And in return they would build monasteries and, which were in turn sacked. So when the French revolutionaries decided to help themselves to church property, they already had precedent for this sort of thing from England. And basically, cardinals would be could be vetoed by the Pope. But if you look at it like that, you'd have to accept, wouldn't you, that it could last forever. I mean, I suppose at the beginning, all these sort of primitive European monarchs who didn't know any better would think, we better follow what the man in Rome says, and certainly follow what the people, the men he sends over to us, tell us to do, and it was only a matter of time before they rebelled. And of course it would in practice be impossible. I've spoken to a Catholic and he was kind of saying Islam is illegitimate because it doesn't have a pope. Well, it doesn't have an interpreter of the Quran. But you don't really need an interpreter. I mean, obviously, if you convert, okay, if you decide to adopt the laws in the Quran in good faith, you would have to follow them properly, and I suppose the temptation will always be to dilute principles and ignore the bits that we don't like, and to cherry pick. But so what would happen is like every country in the world would say, okay, this is my ambition, obviously, and it would be to get every country in the world to say, well, this is the best system, and it's quite clear in a lot of in many areas it sounds fair enough. Probably we will end up cherry picking some or giving some verses more emphasis than other countries might, and of course you can't stop people from doing that, and they will anyway. But time will tell which country will emerge as the strongest nation as a result of following this. So my anticipation is that if Israel were to adopt it, then it could become Greater Israel. Because, assuming that it got good results under secular Quranism, and the argument I would put to the Israelis is this, if you want to be in good standing with God, if you care about these things, you should be at least no-hide, and we already know you're not. So, how about raising your standards, and once you adopt secular Quranism, everybody will follow you because you're light of the nations, and people kind of care what you do, and they follow you. And then, so Israel does it, and then, everything goes really well, and then all the countries around Israel will think, wow, they're doing really well, we want to be part of it, so we will give up territory in order to become part of Greater Israel. So that could be the future, and obviously, I think for the West, they would, if they adopted secular Quranism, they would restore the patriarchy and their nations to good moral sense, and we no longer have to feel this terrible sense of self-loathing at this stupidity and cowardice and hypocrisy and incompetence and corruption of our politicians, and then we will just feel better governed and be better people. And China, I think China will be go globo homo in their own way. I've just noticed that they have really quite liberal laws about LGBT rights. So they will, I think, feel the what's the word? The push towards liberalising these things when before, homosexuality was a sexual offence. That they're now, they've repealed that, and so they have liberalised. And what will happen to China is that its population will halve every generation, and eventually they will have the same problems as the West. So I think they should watch out as well. And they also have no-fault divorce. So that's another thing that they should watch out for. But, as regards their one-party state, they've got that right, at least. But, the Chinese can, I know they'll end up picking and mixing everything, but, they'll probably say, we're not going to give up pork. We can, live with the other rules, but we're not going to give up pork. And that probably will be good enough, because, they've got other things right about their government. I mean, that social credit thing is, you can program it according to, for example, the Quran. I mean, there's nothing particularly objectionable in the social credit scheme that they operate. If it actually rewards people for doing the right thing and punishes them for doing the wrong thing. Okay, I won't go on. It's already 1:30. Christine Ramsey asks, is there a time frame for the global takeover of secular Quranism? Of course not. But I think, if just one country were to adopt it, it would have a dramatic effect, particularly if it were a major country. I think Israel would be quite a coup if I could get them to do it, right? And then if Israel were to adopt it, then I think most Western nations will follow suit, and then they can say, well, China, what about doing that? And China might agree, because the arguments are so clear, and all the stuff that's happening in the West, it could easily happen to China. Bandita asks, what is more patriarchal than the current church structure? Or which structure are you talking about? You mean the Catholic Church, do you? Or the Orthodox Church? In the Anglican Church, there are female bishops. Bandita says the Reformation was a disaster for mankind. I don't see how it could have been avoided. Lauren asks, can you explain how, let's say, an atheist who venerates Germanic gods and owns ancestors could utilize SK? Well, you would be allowed to practice idolatry under secular Quranism, which guarantees freedom of belief with chapter 2, verse 256. So, you can be atheist and to polytheist. It'll be fine. Your temple, synagogue, church won't be closed down. Yes, Dr. Menkaday. Jen did rather rage quit, didn't she? I mean, I am really trying to help her, and I think, if she could just measure her mental health by how civil she can be for me. I mean, obviously she hates me, she hates my guts, but if she can just control herself to be civil, I mean, she can be civil and sarcastic, she doesn't have to, just all the shouting and swearing is just really rather ugly. But gosh, I've been talking for over 2 hours. You must be so bored with me. So I'll play you out with some music and go to bed. Thank you all for listening.